Vaccine approval for kids may be a bit delayed. Would you buy Amazon's new robot that follows you around the house? And James Bond is back at long last. Wednesday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Wednesday, September 29th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hi, Carlo.
Happy hump day, my friend, and to everyone listening. Before we get into it, I just want to say we have had tech issues sort of across the apps this week, Spotify, Apple, and the rest. So if you're listening to this and you've noticed that it's been delayed, it's not you, it's us. It's not interesting, the reason why, but it's just an issue with our RSS feed. But we should have it fixed, so hopefully this will be going up at normal time. And thank you guys all for just sort of bearing with us with the tech problems we've had lately.
I really appreciate it because there are so many podcasts out there, honestly. And so if you're listening, I genuinely thank you. There's only 24 hours in a day, so many podcasts, so many things that you could be doing. So the fact that you choose to spend 20 somewhat minutes with us is really, really appreciated.
Absolutely, Joel.
Okay, now let's get to some news and stop wasting everyone's time, right? The Pfizer vaccine's authorization for children aged 5 to 11 could be slightly delayed. The company submitted trial data to the FDA, but not the official request for an emergency use authorization. So that is expected, quote, in the coming weeks, according to Pfizer. Dr. Fauci said he is still hopeful that there could be shots in young arms by Halloween.
That seems unlikely because just based on how long this has taken in the past, it took the FDA a little more than a month to approve the authorization for 12 to 15-year-olds. So they would really have to have that EUA application in hand, like basically now, in order to get this done by the end of October. It seems more likely to be in November now. I don't really know why they didn't file for the EUA and just submitted the initial data. Anyway, just something to keep an eye on. I also just wanted to mention this because this survey just like blew my, put me through the roof yesterday when I saw it. This is a survey out of the Kaiser Family Foundation, which has been doing really good polling on vaccine stuff. It found that 71% of unvaccinated respondents said that the boosters were a sign that the vaccines are not working. And that's just, I find that so frustrating because it's so ignorant, right? It's like people forget that, we're in a pandemic, right? We're in a pandemic. If we were in a measles pandemic, the measles vaccines would be buckling under the weight of just how much virus is out there. I think it's a really important thing to just remember that to the extent that we're seeing more breakthrough cases, it doesn't show you that the vaccines aren't working. It just shows you that they're under an incredible amount of stress just by virtue of how much of this COVID-19 virus is just out there in the air, right?
And also the more people that get vaccinated, the more quote unquote breakthrough infections they're going to be. Even if the vaccines were they're still that 96 percentile that they were originally talking about, you're still talking about millions of people who would be getting COVID breakthrough infections.
Yeah, exactly.
And another just thing to remember is that early on, these companies set the bar so high in terms of the 95% number. But early in the pandemic, we were thinking that a vaccine would be successful if it was maybe 50-60% effective. And that's like the flu vaccine, right? I mean,
totally.
One North Carolina hospital system has fired about 175 workers who refused to get vaccinated, thought to be among the largest ever mass termination over a vaccine mandate.
It's the vaccine mandates you're still not seeing these worst case scenarios play out with these mass people leaving their jobs in mass numbers. I mean, 175 people, like that's not nothing, but it's not the worst case scenario. And it's, what I'm seeing, what this suggests to me is just that the mandates are working. There's a lot of people out there who are making sort of a fuss over it, but then they're going in and getting their shot so they don't lose their job.
Mark Levine, New York City council member, he said, we were told that requiring vaccines for healthcare workers would lead to waves of resignations, making it difficult for hospitals to function. Here's where we are in New York City 2 days in. Big surge in staff getting vaccinated, no operations crisis in hospitals. So yes, vaccine mandates work.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
On to some other news. The Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs defended the Biden administration's pullout from Afghanistan at a high-profile hearing on Capitol Hill. General Mark Milley testified under oath that he urged Biden not to withdraw all troops from Afghanistan, contradicting the president's claims that no one had warned him against it. Milley also defended his calls with a Chinese counterpart in the last days of the Trump administration, saying that senior Trump officials had actually sanctioned those calls.
The takeaway from this hearing, which I got a chance to watch a little bit of, it seems like it's pretty obvious that Biden was not being truthful when he said that no one in the military had warned him against withdrawing so quickly. I mean, Milley said under oath, as you just said, that they had warned him. So I think you can both acknowledge that he lied there, but still agree with the decision, as I do, that to just cut bait and not listen to what these guys have said, many of whom have been very wrong on this for 20 years and counting now.
It's weird that he wouldn't have just admitted that, though.
Yeah, I don't.
Why not just say I received different advice, or different expectations, and I made a different decision.
Yeah, I made the executive decision. I'm the president. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
President Biden canceled a trip to Chicago today in order to hunker down with Democrats in Congress ahead of a series of crucial votes that could make or break his economic agenda. Biden is personally now negotiating with Senators Manchin and Sinema, the two centrists that he needs, over the cost of his social spending bill, as the House prepares to vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill as soon as tomorrow.
That bill in serious danger of not passing now after Bernie Sanders came out yesterday urging progressives not to vote for it and to sort of hold their ground unless that other big spending bill passes first. So again, this will sort of come to a head tomorrow. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. But hovering over everything, of course, are these looming deadlines on funding the government and raising the debt ceiling. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen out yesterday saying that if they don't work this out soon, the government will literally run out of cash in 3 weeks on October 18th. That, I think, is part of the reason why the market yesterday just took a nosedive down something like 2.5%. I think there's just a lot of fear out there that Congress is going to drop the ball on this, which I still think is unlikely, but it gets more likely with every day there's not a deal, right?
I don't really think that that's why the market tanked yesterday. I don't think that was it in terms of, because it was such a big drop. Most traders, most investors, I think, feel pretty confident that at the end of the day, they're going to raise the debt ceiling, that they're going to fund government, and that there's not going to be a shutdown. I think a lot of it has to do with this next story about just inflation. Also, there were a lot of things that happened yesterday, and a lot of investors will tell you that they think that it was overdue, that the markets took some type of fall and pulled back a bit. So a lot of it has to do with inflation. And if you thought that the various price increases that you've noticed just about everywhere would have eased by now, you're wrong. From energy to houses to consumer staples, prices continue to go up without an end in sight. And as we mentioned yesterday, crude oil eyeing $80 a barrel. Some analysts predict $100 if it's an especially cold winter. Natural gas is up 180% over the last year. Home prices in the U.S. were up about 20% in July for the 14th straight month of accelerating increases, breaking yet another record. So we've been hearing for a while from everyone from Janet Yellen to Fed officials that it's all transitory, keyword transitory. But if transitory is like a years-long thing, then that's what we're getting. Right. I mean, clearly these high prices are here to stay for at least a little bit. And we talked about what's been going on in terms of supply chain issues. You had massive stimulus where you pumped a lot of money into the economy. As we've argued, some people who actually didn't necessarily need it, those people buying stuff, putting more pressure on the supply chain. So anyway, that's where we are in terms of inflation. And if you're just a regular person like we all are, and you've done anything, bought anything, left the house, tried to get food, tried to fill up your tank of gas, you've noticed that it's just costing a whole lot more. Everything is just like a fortune to just do it, to just function.
I think you could argue this is probably the biggest pressure that's going to be on Democrats next year ahead of the midterms, and President Biden too, if this doesn't start to ease. The housing market, I mean, that number yesterday on housing prices was astounding. Like, at what point does the housing market start to cool off? Because there's just so many people out there. I think I've heard anecdotally, myself being one of them, who are in the market and then just said, screw this, that this is crazy. If I don't have to move, I'm not going to buy a house when the prices are this high. So does that start to have a sort of, downward effect on prices? It hasn't happened yet, which I'm surprised by. Also, lumber, on the lumber beat, lumber prices rising again. They bottomed out over the summer. Now they're back on the upswing, and not even your coffee is safe. Coffee futures jumping through the roof. That has more to do with like weather in South America than anything else. But that, of course, could trickle down to the cafe by the end of the year, making your morning latte even more expensive.
And we talk about wage growth and what a lot of these companies are doing to bring in workers, because we're still dealing with this major labor shortage. Those costs are all passed on to customers. So every place, every Chipotle, every fast food chain, anywhere that they're paying workers more to come in, to just get them to bring people on, those costs immediately, for the most part, get passed on to the customer. It's another reason why we're seeing everything just costing more.
Yeah, I'm actually fine with that kind of sort of, I guess you'd call inflation, but it's these bigger things like the natural gas thing, the oil, like $100 oil again. Really? We haven't seen that in I don't even know how long, right?
Look, people are okay, I think, buying a latte from Starbucks for $4, $5, because you know that company is taking care of its workers, right? They get benefits, they pay for a lot college and stuff like that, and so you're accepting that. I get it, but when you're seeing it just totally across the board, it's again, like your paycheck is just not going as far, and it's just everything is costing a lot of money. Amazon, meanwhile, announcing a boatload of new products and devices at its fall hardware event, including a wall-mounted smart screen that blends into the wall, a smart thermostat that's half the price of a Nest, a new Fitbit-style fitness tracker, and a home robot named Astro that looks like a cross between Rosie from the Jetsons and WALL-E.
You ever see WALL-E? That's a great movie.
No.
I haven't. Oh, you should watch it. I may rewatch it this weekend. It's so good. It's one of those kids movies. It's actually for adults and it'll like make you cry. Anyway, Amazon also unveiling that flying home security camera. I remember we talked about this like last year. They teased it. Now it's out. There's also a Ring security kit for like construction sites. And this is the one that perked my ears up, just given what we've been talking about lately, a partnership with Disney on an Alexa-like voice assistant for kids. Kids, Jill, this is what it's all about now. How do we get our kids hooked on this technology from as early an age as possible and then make them users for life? Well, how about an Alexa that sounds like their favorite Disney character, right? That's one way to do it. We got a lot of feedback yesterday, by the way, on the Instagram for Kids conversation we were having. So thank you guys to everybody who wrote in. We can't mention all of them, but I wanted to mention this one thing that one of our listeners, Rebecca, wrote about what she's doing that she had heard from somebody else about trying to she basically said that she's now putting money away in order to essentially bribe her children to stay off social media until they're 16. So basically saying like, well, I will give you this check for X dollars if you just stay off social until you're 16. Then you get the check. You can buy, put it down for a down payment on a car or something. And I like that. I mean, bribery works, right?
Totally.
Especially with kids.
Have you seen the pictures of what the Astro robot looks like? Okay, so if you haven't, and you're just listening to this podcast, I'd recommend Googling it, but it's basically like a smart screen. It's like if you took an iPad and then put it on wheels, right? Yeah. I mean, it's
like or like a box. Like a face.
Yes. So if you have a dog, you cannot possibly have this home robot Astro. I think my dog Trestle would lose his mind. It would be cruel. It would be cruel to do to a pet.
Yeah, it would.
I feel like Trestle would just follow it around barking all day.
Right. Who's this guy?
It's just so bizarre. Now, I was like a huge naysayer on this product originally because I just think it's like, what could possibly go wrong? Putting a roving camera and microphone, going around your house. It is such an invasion of privacy. if somebody gets that data. It's just, I mean, there's so many ways that it could possibly go wrong. A couple of ways it could go right, and I think that we should look at some of the better aspects of technology. Home security. Look, I am like petrified to stay home alone, and I have been for forever. This is even since I was growing up, and most teenagers, they like live for when their parents go away. They could have a party at the house or just do what they want. I used to sleep out at other people's houses if my parents were away, because I was, I have this very, I don't know if it's like I don't know.
Home invasions.
I don't know. And then so I've had this fear forever, and then like it was sort of an irrational fear. And then when I started working in the news and I just covered all these just horrible things, it only made it worse. So anyway, for somebody like me, I guess, not the worst thing to have a camera that can check the basement and make sure, you know, that weird noise that you heard is nothing. You can also use it for elderly people, right? You can monitor them a little bit, right? If you have an older family member, a grandparent, and you're nervous about them being alone in the house, it's certainly, you know, and Amazon's even saying that as well. And you can, in terms of privacy, you could say, you know, the bathroom's off limits, the bedroom's off limits, or whatever.
I did see Vice was reporting, based on like some developers that they had talked to, that they said these developers of this thing said it's not ready for prime time. This thing is like, it just throws itself down the stairs, like it doesn't know how to to use the stairs, and sometimes
how is it supposed to use the stairs, actually?
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently it just doesn't. And then also if it doesn't recognize your face, it'll just sort of follow you around the house, like nipping at your heels. This is very dystopian. I'm not down with it.
You know, here I had this whole theory that it would monitor my basement, but if it can't get to the basement, there goes that. Right. No. All in all, it's a hard pass for me. However, I'm just trying to look at, you know, what possibly would make someone want to buy one. And they're about $1,000 too, so not cheap.
Right.
The new James Bond movie is almost here, for real this time. No Time to Die. Daniel Craig's swan song as 007 got its star-studded red carpet premiere last night at the famed Royal Albert Hall in London, about 18 months after it was originally scheduled for release. Before this movie became sort of a canary in the coal mine for the pandemic, the producing duo behind the Bond franchise saying they are not even entertaining ideas for who's going to replace Craig until next year. In the meantime, if you are planning to see No Time to Die in the theaters when it opens in the U.S. next weekend, plan accordingly. The final cut clocking in at 2 hours and 43 minutes.
No time to die, more like no time to pee. Huh?
Cute, Carlo.
I was proud of that one. You know, we could talk about this for a while, because this is something that I've been debating with my friends. But I will support Daniel Craig as just a fellow handsome blonde guy. I think he made a very good James Bond. I also think Idris Elba would be very good when they start talking about who's going to be in the role next. But I did want to mention one thing that. Yeah, well, he's the man, and he's so good in The Wire. He's just so good looking too. Anyway, I did want to mention this one thing. Daniel Craig was asked last week if James Bond should be a woman, and I thought he had a very good, nuanced answer to this. I'm just going to quote it briefly. The answer to that is very simple. There should simply be better parts for women and actors of color. Why should a woman play James Bond when there should be a part just as good as James Bond, but for a woman? End quote. And Daniel Craig got some blowback for saying that from, you know, the usual people who are like people who are like professionally offended on the internet, I guess. And I don't really understand why, because I think he's right. I mean, you know, James Bond is by definition a man. He is an orphan boy from Scotland who joins the Royal Navy and then becomes like a secret agent. Like, that's the story. There can be a female James Bond, but she can't be James Bond. You know what I mean? I don't understand why everything has to be like, can a woman play this part? Or it's just, that's James Bond's a guy.
I hear you. And I love that you call them the people who are professionally offended, because it feels like that, right? It's like, can you wait before you're offended? Can you actually just listen to what he said? Because as you said, it was like quite a nuanced answer. And he is actually arguing the opposite of what you think, which is he's arguing for better roles and more equality.
Exactly.
Okay, so now we're going to try out a new name for this last section. Here's what else you need to know before we go. I'm not sure if it's rolling off the tongue, but I kind of like it.
We'll go with it for now.
The CIA reportedly evacuated an intelligence officer in Serbia who had injuries consistent with the mysterious Havana syndrome that's afflicted American diplomats and spies around the world since first coming to light in Cuba in 2016.
That's a story we should probably spend some more time on because it's really fascinating and weird, just straight up weird. The Wall Street Journal out with another Facebook expose citing internal documents that show that its research into children went actually far beyond just an Instagram for children, including studying kids younger than 4 years old in the hopes of designing future products tailored to them. One document cited by the Journal makes mention of, quote, exploring playdates as a growth lever.
I take
say that again. Yeah. Facebook, quote, exploring playdates as a growth lever. This company is a menace to society.
I take back any defense I had for them yesterday. The attorney for Brian Laundrie's family confirmed the parents and Brian went camping together after he came home without Gabby Petito and before he went missing.
He remains still missing, of course. This big court hearing in the Britney Spears saga today. The biggest item on the docket is the removal of her father, Jamie, from that conservatorship. We'll keep you posted and give you the wrap on what happens tomorrow on the pod.
Barack and Michelle Obama broke ground on the Obama Presidential Library going up on the south side of Chicago. It is a bit controversial. Some community organizers say the center is going to lead to gentrification of a historic neighborhood.
And finally, Kanye West tinkering with his latest album in real time here. Eagle-eyed fans noticed that the track list for Donda on the streaming platforms had been tweaked, including taking Chris Brown out of one song. Kanye has been known to do this in past albums. Drake also did it with his most recent album. It's kind of this new phenomenon that I find sort of interesting, changing art after it's been released, which is something you can do now that it doesn't really exist in like real form, right? It's all in the cloud.
It's a forever edit. Very fascinating.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that is what you need to know for Wednesday, September 29th.
Have a good one, guys.